Hey guys, welcome to another brief overview of the newest episode of Alone Season 11. This episode was a kind of a banger. There's a lot going on in this. And it's one of my top favorite episodes of all time for the show because it's just boom, 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 nonstop action. So much going on. And I'm probably biased because I was in the episode quite a bit, but it sort of brought me back to all my fond memories I had out there. But so starting off the episode, kind of the first thing we see is Isaiah in pain. So he's still having the chest tightness and sort of anxiety attack feelings, and it looks like he's gonna just wrap it up. I mean, he had that gill net, which was amazingly great gift from the survival gods, and he's got a really good sight. I mean, from what I'm seeing on his site, he's got a lot of reindeer moss. He's got a lot of good stuff going on. I think if he could hold out for a few more days and get that gill net in the water, get some food in him, it would have been a whole different ball game for him. But he kind of called it, and you never know. You don't know what the mental aspect of the show Alone is going to do to you out there until you're actually in it. And if you're stressing about stuff, the fact is, the less food you get, I think the faster your mental game falls apart. And we will miss you, Isaiah. But we'll go straight from that into Timber. And Timber is also talking about getting brain fog and not thinking as mentally clearly as he would like to be. And I know exactly that feeling. I think we saw it in last episode where I'm doing that techno trance party in my shelter where there's a little smoke. I talk about how I'm not thinking clearly, my head's not working right. It's that. It's brain fog, stress that by this episode is kind of going away. But there was just a time period where there was so much going on, and I'm trying to get all my ducks lined up in a row, just kind of exerting myself a lot. And eventually that anxiety and pressure you put on yourself starts to take a toll, and you get a little brain foggy, especially if you're not getting a lot of food. And Timber is concerned about that, and rightly so. But Timber does really good this episode. His shelter is looking like, to me, it's the favorite shelter I've seen on the show ever. It's just so tight and beautiful. It's got every little nook and cranny chinked with moss. It's a beautiful shelter, Timber. So Timber's cutting a log, sawing it with his big silky katana boy. The saw jumps off, bites his fingertip even through the glove, and he puts pine pitch on that, covers it up, which is what you got to do to keep bacteria and stuff out of it, and presses on. So Timber goes on a little hike to sort of explore the kill site for his moose. And I can't really blame him. I mean, it seems kind of weird to just go out walking like that, but it's really not. I probably would have done the same thing because you're just curious, and it's something. And plus, not only that, he has a trail cam he set out there, which was really smart, because if you got a kill site with a bunch of meat and stuff and bones laying around, you want to put a trail cam on that because you pretty much know there's going to be action. And that's the name of the game, is when it comes down to it, getting the footage, because we're out there to film a TV show. So that is exactly what I would have done. And I would have went out there for sure to check to make sure that trail cam was still functional. They give each contestant 2 trail cams. So he's got one on his shelter, I'm sure, and now he's got the one on the kill site. Can't blame him, and I'm glad he did, because we got some good bear footage of that thing dragging that rib cage out. But it was a beautiful, beautiful deal. And he gets a little bit spooked because he knows there's a bear in the area because the rib cage is gone. So he starts talking loudly and sort of gets out of the area. But there's a really funny moment where he pees on that damn stick. You see steam coming off that stick, peeing all over it. Hilarious. The helicopter's coming in. It's going to blow my audio. So Timber is laying in his shelter that night, and he's being kept up by wolves howling in close proximity to him. And I can relate to that. They were howling, probably the same wolves were howling. Me and Timber weren't really that far apart. And the same wolves that were howling for him were also howling for me, just a hell of a lot closer to him. But they kept him awake. I mean, every 30 minutes you hear howling close. I mean, it's going to wake you up because it's so freaking silent out there. And to this day, I can only sleep in pure silence now because the silence out there is just deafening. And any little noise will jar you awake. And it's the same way now. I can't sleep like next to people. Like if they're moving at all, I just jump up and I'm awake and I can't go back to sleep. But eventually that'll probably go away. But you get used to sleeping in pure silence. And if you're hearing animals out there, that's going to keep you awake and it's going to affect your performance. But he gets up and seems like he's in a pretty good mood, enjoying the beautiful morning, being pretty excited. And yeah, crisp morning of maybe day 26 or something along those lines. And Timber's feeling good, looking good, in good spirits. We're going to cut over to Sarah at this point. Sarah's looking pretty chipper too this episode. She goes and harvests a bunch of grass seed and removes the seeds from it, pounds it and grinds it into flour, makes it into a little cake to try to get some carbs and to try to get a little bit of variety in her diet. And it's super fun scene. And she does a good job. She makes a little White Castle patty and eats it. And the flavor, it sounded like the flavor was pretty good, but the husks, some of the seed husks were still in there, making it a little bit rough to chew, but she sounds like she's going to keep trying. So that's exciting. I can't wait to see if she can produce perfect little bread made from Arctic flour. That's awesome stuff. So we finally get a look inside Sarah's shelter, and it looks bomb in there. It looks really tight and cozy. That's something I really, really enjoy, is seeing how everybody else went about making their shelters and looking at the inside and how they experienced all their time out there. Because I don't know, it's just nice to see the different varieties and the different ways everybody else takes. But Sarah's shelter's looking really good though anyway. So we get a little bit more depth into what makes Sarah the strong woman that she is. So her husband had a stroke, and she has a fishing lodge in Alaska to like run and take care of, and she's got animals and stuff. And her husband has a stroke, spends the entire winter in the hospital, and Sarah's up there in the Alaskan bush by herself. She literally has to fly into her house in a damn helicopter. That's how remote she is. But she's taking care of everything by herself. She can't just leave. So she's got to take care of her house, all her dogs and animals and everything else. So we get a little insight on why she's as tough as she is. I mean, she did a whole winter in Alaska solo. And that's amazing. I didn't know that about her. But anyway, I love Sarah. And in this episode, we get to see her making some beaver snares and putting them on like slides and runways where they come out of the water to go get sticks. They make these little slides and they use the same ones over and over again. But she puts some big snares over those trails, and be interesting to see if she can pull off a beaver, because a beaver is a big food item out there. And you can sort of see in one of my scenes, I have a beaver snare out as well. I made like a slick mud slide, and then at the top of that I put a green stick so that they'd see the mud slide, go in to investigate, see my bright green fresh beaver stick at the top of it, and then dip under a little stick into my snare, and then I'd have them. But anyway, I have the same sort of program going, because one day I did see a beaver in my river swimming around. So beavers are on the menu, and it's good to see Sarah out there trapping. She's in good spirits though. She's looking good, feeling good. Her shelter's looking awesome, and I think, is set up for the long term. We just got to see her upgrade her food intake. But realistically, Sarah probably does not need as many calories as a lot of us do. I mean, it seems like women in general just don't burn through the calories like dudes do. So, but anyway, it's good to see Sarah kicking butt out there, and and being pretty chipper and feeling good. So Timber is set up, Sarah is set up so far, and we'll cut to William, who is also in this episode finishing his shelter up. That thing's looking really good and tight. He does something awesome. He finds a 2-liter pee bottle, which is another gold item to find out there. And I can't express enough how valuable it is to be able to pee without getting out of your shelter in the middle of the night. It's a game-changing deal. So he's fortunate enough to find this old pee bottle that floated up probably many, many years ago. And there it is, something he talks about having wanted to find, and he got it. And it's a beautiful thing. It sounds like William is running on the last of his food, and he makes this lure, this paracord lure, in a really simple, interesting way. It's just 2 different colors of paracord sort of bundled up on this stick. But the way he has it is the shape of it makes it so that his lure pushes a lot of water, which attracts fish. Fish have a lateral line that goes along their side that it's sort of like senses movement. And the more water you can get your lure to move, the more the fish are able to pinpoint it and to go after it. And that is pretty important in this situation, especially because the water is so dirty. They don't go as much by sight as they do smell and the lateral line sense of the movement. So William's lure is perfect. He throws it out there, gives it some rips, and we see this pike come up and swat at it and miss it. Super good, cool footage. Throws it back out there. Boom, 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 got him. He throws that thing up on the bank. It's an amazing fishing scene. I loved it. And William is back on the pike train. So he was just wrapping up the rest of his whitefish at this point, gets this pike, throws it in his food stash, and he's money. I think the next morning he wakes up, gets a hare rather, a pretty darn big one, in a snare, and he was excited about that. So William's looking good. Resupplied his food supply, puts it into his, and he also sucks the brains out of the rabbit head. We get to see that. That's kind of funny. He loves that. And talks about how there's so much fat and various other nutrients like B vitamins and stuff in the brain, which is an important thing. But he puts his food back out on his long food stash, and Sassy pays another visit to William. And that thing goes ballistic on that food. It comes along that goes along his food catch, drops down onto his bag, and it's just going bonkers. It wants that stuff bad. Who knows? It could be a trail cam. It could be William just set that camera up in that spot because he knew Sassy was in the area doing a little bit of patrolling. He might be, as this scene is unfolding right now, William might be on his way over there ready to take care of Sassy with if nothing else, a little bit of a scolding probably, but Sassy is still terrorizing William. So that thing is, not on his team, I guess we'll say. So in this episode, I get more screen time kind of than I do in any other episode up to this point. And I get a big pike in my gill net. This is a whopper, man. It's like this big around. 44 inches, they say it is. And the reason that they can put that on the screen pretty safely is because when I went out there, I had measurements put on my axe, so I could accurately measure things. So when it says on the screen that a fish is a particular size, it's probably very, very close because I do have a way to measure it, and I say that to the camera every night. At the end of the day, I go through and I summarize. When I was in my shelter, I'd summarize everything I did that day and I'd talk about it. And that's where a lot of the audio comes from throughout the season, is me talking in my shelter after the day's ended about all the events. But anyway, I measured the fish, and 44 inches sounds about right because it went up from the ground up to my waist, almost past it. It was a lunker. I say it was 30 pounds, but that could be a minor exaggeration. But it was 20 plus, guaranteed, no doubt about it. That thing was heavy, thick, girthy, and it was one of the fattiest pike I've caught up to this point. Like some pike are pretty lean and you cook them and there's not a lot of fat in them. But this particular pike had, like when I cooked it in a pot, I cooked part of it and you see I smoked part of it in the next scene. But I cooked this thing and it just, the top of the pot just filled with fat. I will never forget that particular one because that was an amazing deal, getting my first huge one. Some fish have a lot of fat, others don't, and this particular one was fatty. So I put some of that pike on the smoker that I built. So my smoker is just 4 legs stuck into the ground, and then I built a square rack with trapping wire across it. And the heat, combined with the heat and all the smoke that comes out of my shelter, I was able to smoke fish really, really fast that way. And I was amazed at how effective it was. I could smoke like all the fish you see on the smoker in this episode. That would probably take 4 to 6 hours to smoke entirely until it's like very dry and very easily preserved for a very long time because of the temperatures. So I didn't smoke it all to the point of it like being hard and super tough. I smoked it to the point where it was a little bit soft still, but I knew it was preserved, and then I would put it in my food cache, which was a couple different places I had going by this point. So I'm smoking that fish, and then I go outside to get some water, and I see a big bull moose. We go on a pretty exciting moose hunt, and the camera picks up a lot more light than the human eye does, especially the big Canon, the XA Canons that the show uses. They have a pretty big sensor, so they pick up light significantly better than the human eye does. So it might look kind of bright out there when I conclude that moose hunt, but it was actually extremely dark. And that's why they didn't even use any of that. Most of that GoPro footage I filmed, because by then the GoPro is just not picking up anything. It's all really grainy, nasty footage, and I can't really blame them for not showing much of that. But so I get back to my shelter, and I'm pretty jacked up because there's moose in my area, and I know for a fact they're like there. So about that, I decided I could legally hunt that moose after dark, but the thing about it is I didn't want to go out there and end up trying to cut up a moose all night long when I know for a fact there's grizzlies and wolves in the area, like actively hunting. And we know for sure now there is, because timber on that very day is upstream from me, like getting footage of grizzly bears and all sorts of stuff. So they were close, man. Another fresh moose gut pile. Everything that was over on timber site would have been on mine. And those bears can smell a kill from miles away. So they would have came. For sure they would have came. So I heard that grouse noise, and it's very distinct. Like there's no doubt about it. To me, that was a grouse. So once I found it, I look up there, and there it is, and then it goes poof, shoots across. I watch it land in this big overhang, and this spruce tree that overhangs my lake. And I walk over there, grab the first arrow that I can on my quiver. I didn't really care at that point. Knock it and take a shot at this grouse, go right through it, drop it, and my arrow is out on the lake. Eventually, the next day I get that arrow, but it was I still had quite a few arrows. Well, shoot, I have like all my arrows, I think, except for one that I lost on the first day walking through the brush. But I get my broadhead back. I eat this grouse the next day, and it was amazing. I watched that footage of me eating that grouse leg, and I could like taste it. I felt like I was back there because that was such a moment of pure joy that I finally could verify that I had grouse in my area after not seeing any for so long. But the grouse was delicious, and as I set the grouse down to cool off, walk up to the back of my shelter, and you can kind of hear me chewing and talking with my mouth full because I'm up there like testing my smoked pike. And right then we hear right on the other side of the river. I run over, and there's a beautiful pack of wolves, a moment I'll never forget for the rest of my life. I loved it so much. And I got to see that beautiful black wolf howl right in front of me, and I was able to capture it on camera. It was like, it was sort of a moment where I'm like, oh my God, I'm out here in the middle of this. I'm becoming one with my environment. The animals are running naturally all around me, like I'm not even here. I'm here, I belong here. This is my home. And I don't know, I can't put my finger on exactly what made it feel so amazing, besides just the sight of seeing wolves move around in their natural environment. But it was just like all this amazing activities going on right around me, and they're coming so close to me. And I just sort of felt like I was at one with the Arctic Circle at that point. And it was a great moment and a great day. And then we cut to William snaring that snowshoe hare, which was pretty awesome. He got that. And then the last scene, it shows Timber thatching up his roof on his shelter. God, that thing is pimp. Timber puts on the greatest Emmy Award-winning skit that made me lose my mind with laughter. That's like probably my favorite scene in the history of the Alone Show was Timber's skit with the place in the moose antlers. Round of applause for Timber for that, because that was badass, man. I jumped. I was sitting in a hammock in the woods watching that, and I literally got up. I had to get up because I was risking falling out of the hammock. I was laughing so hard I died. But anyway, that was a beautiful thing. And to summarize, everybody who's still out there right now is looking strong. We are about to go to battle, you guys. Timber's shelter is money. Sarah's shelter is money. William's shelter is just finishing up, and it's looking good. My shelter's wrapped up. We all have absolute promise of getting food in the future. We've all figured out some sort of strategy to get food, and everybody's getting it in one way or another. So fall is turning quickly into winter, and we are all looking pretty good out there right now. So I think we're about to turn it into the next gear of this show and start kicking ass, because everybody who's left is sitting on not only a shelter that's done and ready to go, but adequate food and good variety of ways to get it. At the very, very end of the episode, it shows the little teaser thing for the next one. And what goes on in that is it shows Sassy really going ballistic on William's food stash. It shows me falling into an icy spot and complaining about potential hypothermia. It was a serious situation. You're not going to want to miss that one. And what else does it show? Anyway, you get it. There's action, heavy action coming up. This next stretch, you guys are going to freaking love it. Guaranteed. Prepare for war, I guess. So I'll see you guys soon in the next one. Appreciate you.